Hello and welcome to TRUGREEN in Action. Most people think lawn care starts in the spring, but the truth is, what you do right now in January or February decides whether you'll get a thick, green lawn or a patchy, stressed one when the weather warms up. In this video, I'm going to show you the 5 biggest causes of spring bare patches and the simple steps you can take to avoid them. So number 1, grass needs sunlight, nutrients, oxygen and water. If any of those are depleted, then fundamentally the lawn, the grass will struggle. So the first one is anything that covers the light from the grass. So the most common of these are usually falling leaves, debris laying on the lawn, or perhaps overhanging shrubs. So here we can see, got a good example of where plants are laying on the lawn, and we can see underneath here how the lawn started to thin out. It's just going brown, and that will leave us bare patches if we leave that on there. So it's important to keep debris and any overhanging shrubs or plants themselves off of the lawn if at all possible. You can see again we've got that edging, just that edging along here of the brick, and then outside of that we're just starting to see the lawn dying off here. So again, that needs a bit of focus. Just look out for that. There are obviously occasions when you've got something like a building that blocks light and you get shaded areas. In truth, the best course of action with those, whilst I don't usually endorse obviously removing lawn, is to actually plan your garden around that, if you can, obviously. Now, when it comes to leaves, obviously clearing those off as regularly as you can at the end of the year. A good last cut of the year is important. If the grass is too long, then clearing those leaves becomes hard work and often isn't done. Again, clearing them, use rakes if you can, or a leaf blower. That actually helps it sort of move some air through the upper profile of the lawn as well. The hardest thing, I see a lot of people who get the mower out to try and pick them up. As soon as leaves get wet, that's a really tough job. Number 2 is grubs. So the 2 most common are leather jackets. They're the larvae of the daddy long legs or the crane fly, and chafer grubs. So that's really from the chafer beetle. There's a few different varieties, but we'll cover that in another video. Now, you get grubs. Generally they're kind of, particularly with leather jackets, they'll be laid actually sort of towards the autumn last year, and actually kind of they hatch a couple of weeks after being laid, and they're constantly in the lawn throughout the winter months. So what I've just done is just had a little dig around. We've obviously got a rough lawn out the back here, got a lot of building work going on. Just had a little dig around, and within a couple of digs, hopefully you can see there, we've got actually 3 chafer grubs. It's a nice C shape. They're quite obvious when you get a chafer grub. 3 chafer grub and 1 little leather jacket as well. That's not an adult by any stretch of the imagination. They'll get to a little bit fatter and longer than that as they move into the spring, but just a small leather jacket in there as well. There's obviously far less of those, but actually in this case, these aren't actually enough to create an awful lot of damage at the moment, but there's clearly some present, and it could do with a process of treatments to get that under control, or just to at least break the cycle so that numbers are kept controllable. But just, yeah, for a little example for you, hopefully that just helps know what you're looking for. Now, sometimes you get a little bit of damage actually before the winter, and that starts to show up, and you can take signs then very quickly. Often though, what will happen is that damage continues throughout the winter, but because the grass isn't showing, so actually you're not getting leaf growth, it's not as obvious. So what I find a lot is that customers come the spring, when the grass actually begins to try and bounce back and actually finds that its roots have been eaten, or kind of it's got damage to the plant itself, that's when it seems to look very quick in that transition from actually a nice lawn to suddenly some bare areas appearing. Now, if you have small amount of leather jackets or chafer grub in the lawn, it kind of sometimes actually you're not going to see those bare patches appearing. It's when it gets to a certain level that it starts to tip the balance, and actually also if there's any other impacting factors, the lawn is under stress already, then again though it will exacerbate the effects of the leather jackets and the chafer grubs eating the roots and the grass system. As far as actually preventing this, it is very difficult. Kind of if you get them in the lawn, it's really often a reactive service. So what you're really looking to do is either get a professional application down on the lawn come autumn, sort of that's usually the best time. Chafer grubs can be a touch earlier than that. That just helps them, it tackles them at a young stage in that cycle. It becomes very difficult when you get to the spring to actually address them effectively. There are nematodes that you can use, and a good course of those can help reduce numbers to again, but the main sort of aim at this time of year is actually identify the problem and then start to build that grass up so that it's more resilient against that damage. Number 3, compaction. So during the summer months, we all know that we tend to use the lawn more, and so it gets a lot more traffic on it, a lot more wear. But actually the winter months are when it's real risk of compaction because of the saturated nature of the soil. So as soon as that's compacted, so if you've got an area that you walk across to get to your shed, if you've got dogs, children that you can't keep off the lawn or don't want to keep off the lawn, then what that will result in is it will result in that lawn becoming compacted. So a good plan of aeration is really what's needed for that, both before, kind of so at the end of the autumn, and then again after if it's still compacting in the spring prior to fertilization, and then moving into your summer season, so to speak. Number 4, plants or weeds as they are on the lawn, or moss. Now the most common one this time of year is going to be moss, because that's the one that's most active, because it thrives in moist areas. So the weather that you get over the winter really encourages that to take hold. Now often that will come in because there's bare patches already, but it can encroach into small bare patches, and over that winter when you're not on the lawn and not using it, it can rather creep up on you. So you head out in the spring to do your first cut, and what you find is actually a lot of moss there, and when that's removed you've got large bare patches that you're dealing with. So if we take a little look on the test lawn here, what we can see is we've got some moss, live moss in the lawn, and once that gets killed off and has to come out, if we were to treat that, and actually what we're going to be left with is some bare patches need filling. At the moment there's probably enough grass coverage there to work with without having to do some reseeding, but again important to hit this early so that you're on top of that rather than having to do remedial work. Obviously a proactive course of moss control is the ideal solution for this, but above all else it's about making sure that the grass is the healthiest thing on your lawn. So that's a good fertilization program, good practice of aeration, scarification. That will keep the lawn lush. It won't allow the bare space for nature to fill it with moss. Again, anything that encourages moisture is always going to encourage the presence of moss. Number 5. So this one's disease. Now I'm not going to touch on, there's several kind of diseases you can get, but the only one we're going to focus on here, because we've had a bit of snow recently across the country, is actually snow mold. So what happens when you get snow onto the lawn is it actually insulates the top layer of lawn, and it creates a perfect little humidity underneath that layer of snow on the top of the lawn itself. And that is a perfect environment for fungus to grow and spread. So you get things like snow mold, fusarium, microdochium, and they can take hold very quickly. Now the best preventative here, if at all possible, is to actually keep the lawn clear. So if you do get snow laying on it and it looks like it's likely to be there for any length of time, try and rake it off to a safe area if you can. Obviously not always possible, and if you can't, then really all you can focus on then is remedial action. That's really a case of getting air back introduced into the upper profile of the grass plant itself and getting fungicides down if required. In our next video, we will be looking at what you can do if you've already got these bare patches. If you need any tips or advice in the meantime, reach out to us for your free TRUGREEN lawn analysis. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. But until next time, that's all from me on TRUGREEN in action.